Morning, quilt people. We are back. I am rested. I've had some coffee. Very nice. So I am ready to get back at it. And I just wanted to show you some things that, just little tiny things, little tweaks and stuff that I've discovered over the years that have really helped me getting a project from this stage. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen my tutorial of how to put the sandwich together, right, the back, the batting, and the quilt top on a wall, right, it really is the best way to make sure that you can smooth out your work, right, while it's still solid. Okay, so if you haven't seen that tutorial and if you're not using that technique, I highly recommend it, especially if you're going to quilt it without a long arm, right? When you have a long arm, it naturally stretches, right, the material and everything to kind of a natural kind of taut place, whereas when you're doing your quilting on a regular domestic machine, or in my case, a mid-arm, right, a Sweet 16 mid-arm, then you really have to have the layers together. And I don't do the traditional, like all that pinning business. So I use basting adhesive, much of which is really great because not only is it temporary, right? So you can pull it apart and put it back together if you get a lump or a bump in it somewhere, which I love that. Not only is it temporary, but, oh, it's easy to sew through. Like some glues and stuff like that are really not made to be sewn through, whereas these specifically are. Along those lines, I have some that I like a lot better than others, okay? So I'm going to give you the bad news first, all right? So this, do you see that? Quilt basting spray. It comes in this kind of short, fatty can, right? This one is terrible. Completely terrible. And it comes in two different labels. There's a blue label and there's a pink label. They're the same product. I think they're just packaged by different people, okay? It's so toxic. And the overspray is insane. I mean, my dogs started choking and coughing and ran out of the room. It just to let you know, like, it's so toxic, it's unbelievable. So, you know, if you're not into huffing, uh, this product should not be in your home, okay? I can't say it strongly enough. It's completely terrible. And so the overspray just creates this huge, massive cloud of glue, right, in your studio. So suddenly everything that you touch, like even on my arms and stuff like this, it was all gluey. It was not nice. It was not nice at all. It's all over my table. It's all over my carpet. It's all over my dogs. So I really, really, really don't like this product at all. Okay, the ones that I do like are the 505, which I talk about a lot, right? That's a really good one, and it sprays directly on, very little overspray. I would suggest still putting something down on the ground just to protect your flooring, but it's pretty, it's not that messy, right? And same with this one. It's Dritz Quilting Spray Adhesive, right? This is a good one as well. They're very similar. So how you know that you're heading down the right lane, right? Because I also really like this one, Spray and Bond Adhesive. This one, right? So notice the ones that I like are all in this kind of tall can, okay? The one that I don't like is in this short fatty can, okay? So that's how you know, right? At least for me, not this one. Keep with the ones that are in the tall cans, okay? So that's my 2 cents on spray adhesives. So what we're going to do today is essentially take this project off the wall and get it ready for quilting. So it's that in-between step between putting the layers together and actually putting in the machine to start your quilting, okay? So that's what we're going to be doing today. The first thing I'm going to do is trim it up, okay? So I've taken all the pins out, right, that were kind of holding it kind of taut, right, and pulled nicely, not too much, right? You don't want to stretch it, but you do want to have just a nice little bit of tension to it so that it'll be as flat, right, as possible. First thing I'm going to do is take my big scissors and trim it up, right? So I'm just going to cut up here and on here just so that I have maybe about 2 inches around, right? And then we'll move on from there. So I'm just gonna cut it first. Now that I've kind of cut the excess off the sides, really important, at least for me in my process, is I'm going to take the side panels that I just cut off and set them aside. Why? Because they make the perfect sandwich for checking your tension. It is the exact same fabric that you're going to be using in the project, right? Which can throw your tension if the fabric is different than what you're normally using. But I can't stress this enough, especially if you're using a mid-arm or a long arm, that you want to check your tension. Regular domestic machines tend to have a better way of gauging, right? And just having a normal setting and tension. But the mid-arm and long arm, I don't know why they can't figure that out. Like on a domestic machine, I just put it in so I don't hardly ever worry about tension. But on mid-arm and long arm, whoo, you can really wreck a project if you do not have that tension right. Like, figure it out. Okay? We got it on the domestic machines and they're like this big. I don't know. Anyhow, so I'm going to grab this off the wall. Right? It's just my excess that I cut off. And this is going to be my sandwich that I'm going to test my tension, right? So I have, right, a lot of batting here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out some of this batting and just set that aside. Probably use it for a Christmas project or something. I don't know. Who knows? Hate to waste things. Okay, so now I have, throw this over, right? Fabric from the project, right? On both sides with one layer of batting. It's pretty much identical to this project here, right? It's going to have the same type of fabric. It's going to have the same type of batting. It's pretty much going to be what you're going to be sewing. So why not use this to test your tension? Okay, I find that this is a great way to use things that otherwise would just go in the trash for something that is really going to be helpful for you in your process. All right, so now that the excess is kind of cut off, the next thing I'm going to do is take it down from the wall very carefully, right? And make sure that all the layers stay together. I'm going to move it to my table and then just kind of start smoothing it out with my hands. I have it down from the wall, and the first thing I normally do is it tends to be a little bit bumpy, right? It's not perfectly smooth. So I'll actually go through the process of kind of smoothing it out with my hands by just, kind of doing this number, right? And try and get all those excess lumps and bumps out so that it'll be as flat as possible. Okay, so I'm going to do that with the whole thing, both front and back. And I don't know if this actually helps anything, but it makes me feel good. It's in the same way that I, whenever I spray something like this, either whether on the wall or any other process, I always let the glue kind of set and cure for like a good 24 hours before I touch it again, right? Because I really want to make sure that glue is set prior to working with it. So I always try and plan like an extra day between that process and this, okay? So I'm just going to continue on moving along and get this all smoothed out. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the back. I find, there I am. Hello. I find the back actually more important than the front. The top tends to be pretty good, but let me show you. I took CrossFit this morning. My legs are like jello. All right. Not the good kind. You get in prison. Just kidding. Yeah, have fun with that. Okay. All right, so you can see how kind of bumpy it is here, right? And so I'm just going to smooth that out, and then I'm just going to do this, right? And again, can you see how kind of, like, look at this. This is a perfect example. You see that? And so I'm going to try and smooth that all out as best as possible. Okay? So just, right? And they do kind of push out, right? And so you can kind of get all of those wrinkles and bumps out of there, and then just go through the whole project and do that. See, now it's perfectly smooth, right? And so I'm happy with that. And so I'll fold it in half again. Again, there's a bunch of bumps and stuff. So just smooth that out as best I can. Okay, so now that I'm feeling pretty good about that, the next thing I'm gonna do is trim it up for real. Like when it was on the wall, I was just kind of doing it quick to get it off the wall without having to wrestle a huge big monster, right? So now that I have it here, I can do a much more accurate cutting job, and I'm gonna trim it to 1 inch, right, from the border. Okay, so I leave myself an extra inch beyond the border that still has just the batting in the back, but not the top. Okay, why do I do that? Because when you're actually quilting it, sometimes the fabric moves, right? And especially the top can sometimes, as you're quilting over the top of it, right, the top of it can kind of get pushed out further than you were expecting. So if you don't have a little bit excess there of the batting in the back, you may have the fabric push beyond where you really want it to be. So plan for that. Okay, so now that I'm feeling good about this thing, and I feel like I have all the bumps out of it and it's all smooth, right? So now I'm going to go through and cut off the excess. All right, as you can see, I have cut 1 inch, right? So the top ends here, and then I have a 1 inch of just the batting, right? And back. Shablam. Right? So the next thing I'm going to kind of do is do a test to see how well the edges. Now the center tends to be fairly well glued because that's kind of where we're focusing on, right? When we're spraying it on. Where we tend to miss a little bit is on the outer edges, right? So I'll kind of just do a test very, very lightly to see how glued or not this is, and to where does the glue pick up. Right? You can see this corner is really not glued hardly at all. There is a natural tendency for fabric, it doesn't even feel that sticky. There's a natural tendency for this fabric to want to kind of just stick to batting, right? And so that's what I was getting before, but I can see that, wow, I really need to, bolster this up with new glue. Okay, so I'm just going to go around the perimeter and again continue to smooth it out and make sure that I don't have this action, right? So that I know that my sandwich essentially is going to stay together. Okay, so that's what I'll do next. All right, one more thing as I'm going through this. All right, this corner is not too bad, not as bad as the other corner. You can see it's just this much that needs to be kind of addressed. All right, now I do this again. Don't know if it helps, but I just do it for my own good. It feels like I'm doing something. But, so this is the part that needs to be re-glued, right? And so when you spray something out of a can like this, it comes out really cold, right? I don't know if you've ever, like temperature-wise, it's freezing, right? Come on. There we go. So I will just spray that on, and then I'll kind of we all know what a finger press is. Well, I kind of do like a hand press. And so I'll just actually work through the fabric and press it down with as much of like my hand and arms as feels right until it warms up. Again, I don't know if that actually does anything, but it makes me feel better that it's gone from that freezing cold temperature to room temperature, and I've used my hands to kind of continually smooth it out as the glue is setting. I don't know if that helps or not, but that's what I do. Okay, so that's that, and it's pretty much ready to go. I feel happy with that in so far as that it's smoothed out, right? It's smoothed out, and the glue has been checked, especially on the perimeter. Again, that tends to be the worst place for problems. Now, what I'm going to do once I get it to this point is take my regular domestic machine And depending on how I'm going to quilt it, I'm going to either run a couple stitches in the ditch, or I'm going to start my quilting kind of like a crosshatch, depending on kind of where I'm headed with the quilt plan. Okay? So I haven't quite decided how I'm going to quilt this because I tried it on my sampler and it was what I thought was going to work out. I'm so glad I did it on the sampler. It was terrible. Oops. Not great. So I know that that isn't the plan, but I don't know what is yet. So more will be revealed, I guess. So I'm going to think about this for a minute, kind of come up with a plan, and then I'm going to... so the point of why I do this next step is to kind of really solidify the body of it with some stitching that will really help as you're going throughout the process, right? Right now it's kind of loose. Right? And so we want to start tacking it down. And what I'll do is some really long runs, right? In the ditch or wherever, every block or so, to kind of tack down each block where it is. And then that way I can go on the back and check to see if I have any bumps or kind of, you know, issues where the fabric gets turned over. Okay, so if I know I get through this next step without any issues on the back, then I am pretty confident that moving forward that should be taken care of. Again, that's not an issue when you're using a long arm, but when you're using a domestic machine or a mid arm, it is, because the fabric is not being pulled tight while you're sewing it, thus allowing the fabric on the back to overlap, do weird things, and then you just end up with a, you know, messy back, and nobody likes that. So that's what we're going to do at this point. I'm going to just start doing some long runs with my domestic machine, kind of probably in the ditch, right? Just, you know, every row or so, right? And then this way as well. Now, it's really important that when you're doing this, that you use a walking foot of some kind, because you want, like, there's so much material here, right? Between the back and the batting and the top. If you don't have some type of walking foot, or, you know, what's the other word for it? Anyways, on my machine, it has two little feet that drop down on top, right? So you have the feed dogs pulling here, you have the top one pulling here, so that you know the whole project is being pulled through the machine at the same time. If you don't have that top one also doing this while the feed dogs are doing this, you're going to end up with, especially on these long runs of sewing, you're going to end up with a problem. Okay, especially if you start sewing the long runs all in the same direction. Ooh, sometimes it gets really bad because it starts to kind of like turn or arc or do weird things in it, that it doesn't allow it to lay flat in the same manner that it would if you had your whole project moving through the machine at the same time, right? You can see how just the bottom being pulled through and the top is kind of just hanging out doing whatever. Like, things start to just get off and it gets askew very quickly. So that's my suggestion for that. For this next step is to make sure that you have a walking foot or some type of other solution to bring the whole project through at the same speed. All right, so I'm going to think about this for a second. Once I figure out what I'm going to do to quilt it, it may change kind of my initial seams, but I think I'm just gonna do it in the ditch, right? Every row makes it so easy to do, right? And then because it's in the ditch, it's not really seen, and so whatever I want to do beyond that shouldn't be too affected by this next step. Here we go. Just real quick before I start putting it in the machine. Thread selection could not be more important, right? And so you're going to want to take your time at this stage prior to beginning to sew to understand what thread you want to use. Now, my tip for you is to try and get the thread in the bobbin as similar as the thread on the top. Why is that? Because if your tension is a little bit off, you won't have, you know, the other thread showing through. Oh my goodness, Dale, get it together. You know, and then we've all seen that where the tension's a little bit off and you see those little dots, right, of the bobbin thread sticking through the top, and that's no good. So again, I'm going to try and get Now, it's easier on this project because the colors are basically the same scheme on the top to the back, right? No problem. So I'm going to start with threads. As you can see, I have a variety of whites and off-whites all the way to kind of more of a beige. This one has a little more gray in it. This one has a little more brown in it. And kind of see, so I think a bright white, in general, I don't like bright threads in the work. If anything, I'm going to skew more towards a darker tone because a lighter tone will really jump off, right, the work, and it'll be far more visible than a darker tone. Okay, so I'm definitely liking this one better than that one, so that one's out. Let's see if these are the same color. Who knows? No. Okay. So I'm just going to lay the ones down that I think are a good potential, kind of all at an intersection. So they all kind of like intersect here where I'm looking at it and kind of gauge from my gut what is right. And this one here is a really good, I think these ones are going to be too dark. Oh, that one's maybe not bad. That one's maybe not bad for the stop border. It's also probably not too bad for the back because it really is darker. So let's check that. Yeah, I feel okay about that. I'm not in love with it, but I think it's okay. You know, I've decided against that one. It doesn't quite feel right. And so I'm going to, continue just laying these down until I find the right one. Oh gosh, that's really close. Yeah. Yep. This one's it. This one here is it. Okay, so you notice that it tends to be just a slightly darker tone, right? If you just look at the color of this, right, versus this. Right? See these two here. This is a slightly darker tone. This is slightly lighter. And again, I'll always skew a little bit darker when I'm choosing thread selection again so that it doesn't really draw attention to itself. Again, if I am in... if it's a multicolored quilt and you don't know exactly what thread to use, I generally will go with a beige or a gray, as those tend to kind of cross all mediums and be the least noticeable. Okay, so now that I've decided on my thread for the front, I'm going to find one for the back, then I'm going to stick it in the machine, and then I'm just going to sew, right, in the columns, right, and then across in the same manner here and down. Okay, let's do a little close-up here on what we need for a walking foot, right? So my machine comes with this handy little guide, right? And so I put this special foot on here, right, which allows me to drop these back little guys, right? See this back here? And that just clips into it, which then starts doing the pulling of the fabric. Okay, so I have the specialty foot first, right? And then these that come down as the top feeding, or you can also use one of these for a walking foot. I don't know if you've seen this, but it just hooks onto, right? There's the main part that comes down that you attach the foot to, that just goes right in here, and then it just turns any regular machine into a walking foot. So that's another solution for you if your machine does not come with it. Okay, I've decided my thread. I'm ready to get sewing. Really quick. The general rule of thumb when you're actually quilting it is that you should be working from the center out. Okay? I'm not really doing that, okay? And I for this kind of pre-stitching, just kind of locking all the layers together, I don't worry about that too much because once I have those in place, I'm going to flip it over and just verify that, in fact, everything looks good before I move on. And that's the entire idea behind this step. So that's all I'm going to be doing now, is just doing in the ditch between the blocks. I know I keep saying one more thing. But I keep getting reminded of things that I should maybe mention that will help your quilting get better. Okay, I'm going to show you a little close-up, super close-up, in case you haven't done a lot of quilting on a mid-arm or a long arm. This is the technique for bringing the bobbin thread up prior to getting started. It will make your back look less messy. Okay, so we want to make sure that we do that for sure. I'm going to show you the extreme close-up of how we do this. Most people probably know how to do this, but just it is important. It's an important step, so if you don't know how to do it, just pay attention to this. Okay, I apologize if I don't get this where you can see it. I will do my best to really zoom in on this when I'm editing it, but hopefully you can see this. Okay, so I'm holding my thread, right, my top thread, and then I'm going to drop the needle down, right, and then just bring it back up. Now, you'll see when you tug on it a little bit, right, my bobbin thread, which is gray, is now coming up here and I can see it here, right? And so I'll just kind of, you know, move it around until I can get in the loop of it, right? And then just pull it out. So now I am holding both threads. I have the top thread and I have the bobbin thread in my hand, right? And so I pull those a little bit tight, right? I drop, oh, that was unfortunate. I don't know why that happened. Hello, needle, are you okay? Oh, that was really weird. Huh, it seems to be okay. I got caught on something. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple of stitches backwards and then move these threads that I'm holding out of the way off to the side, right, in order to get started. Okay, and then I'm just going to start my actual sewing. I just need to stop saying and one more thing. So the next thing is going to be, so really smoothing it out, right? And also pulling on the back a little bit just to make sure that that's tight so that as you go through, you're getting as smooth of a quilt top as possible, right? So I just hold a little bit of tension with my hands. I do have quilt gloves around here, but I sometimes use those, but not always. Right? And just keep working it through. Make sure that it's smooth. All right. And I'm just going to do a quick check on the back, make sure that nothing weird is going on. Looks good. Okay. Moving on. Here we go. As I'm getting down to the end of this run here, I'm going to just take this and flip it up just to make sure that there isn't any weirdness going on under here, right? Just to make sure that it is in fact flat, right, as possible, and that I'm not going to have any issues. Generally, again speaking, your issues are going to be closer to the edge than they're going to be in the center. Okay, just always be mindful of that. So I'm just going to continue on. It looks okay, kind of keeping it as stretched out as I possibly can. Now I've come to the end of the run. I'm going to just back it up a few stitches and kind of lock it into place. I'm feeling good about that. So I'm going to take it out of the machine and then sew the next row the opposite way. I'm also probably going to skip every other one because at this stage I'm just trying to tack the layers together without getting too granular or into the details of the quilting. I'm just trying to stabilize it, right? Okay, so that's what I'm going to be doing next. Let me just take this out of the machine. And then, like I said, I'm going to flip it around and come back the other direction, probably 2 blocks over. Okay, just to stabilize it a little bit. All right, come on, quilt. That was there. 1, 2. I'm gonna go here. Okay, drop that down again. Pull up that lower. All right, pull up that lower thread. All right, I got that here. Pull that out, and away we go. I think for the first time in my life, I'm like, oh, yay, I did it wrong. So so that I can show you what I'm talking about, what to avoid. So see, this is sewn over, kind of holding this pleat, right? This little fold in the back in place. That's what we're trying to avoid. I have COVID. No, I'm kidding. What's going on? Okay, so I want to make sure that this doesn't happen, right? That's just the worst thing in the world when you have issues like that on the back. So there's a problem. It's too baggy. I'm going to now take it out of the machine, smooth it all out, re-glue where I need to in order to stabilize this so that this, and I'm so glad that I caught it at this stage, because I'm sure we've all had it happen when you get through like the entire project and you turn it over on the back and you have a bunch of issues like this, because again, on a domestic machine, you just can't get the tension on all the layers as you're sewing like you can on a long arm. So, all right, I'm going to pull this out of the machine. I'm going to fix this issue. I'm going to smooth it all out. I'm going to re-glue where needed before moving on. Do you see where there's a little pleat right here? Right? That's what I'm trying to avoid. So I want to check my back, right, all the way around to make sure that this, even though this one isn't bad, I still don't like it there. So I'm going to pull that out and then kind of spread this out and redo it. So at this point, I've pretty much done, right, all of the big grid work, because that's all I'm trying to do, right, is to sew in a big grid at this point to stabilize the work. And so I've just done, you know, big long runs, gridded it out, and then I'm going to go through and kind of start quilting the inside. And again, probably trying to focus on each big grid or big square as I go through it, just to continue to check the back. I don't know if you care what the back looks like so much, but I really do. I don't feel good about my projects if the back looks bad. So I'm just going to go through, but essentially that's all I do to get the project ready to begin quilting, right? That in of itself is its own kind of step and process that if you pay attention to and do it right, it will really help your end result. Okay, so that's it for me today. I hope that you enjoyed that. We have lots and lots and lots of exciting things coming up. Oh my gosh. So the leaf line is just about to drop. The official launch of that is in January. Stores, if you want to order the line, either contact me or Wyndham Fabrics directly to set up order and delivery of that. I'm already starting working on my next line, which is really exciting. I'm looking forward to sharing some of that with you. At this point, I'm just working on initial patterns and the color palette, which is going to be awesome. I'm super excited about that. And yeah, just, you know, stay tuned, I guess. It's been a fun year. Depends how I guess you define fun. But looking forward to 2021. You know, lots of exciting things coming. Ooh, I am going to be posting my wool ornaments pattern for free on my website. So if you want to learn how to make some fun Christmas decorations that are made out of felt or wool, let me just grab, I see one right there. Hold on 1 second. Also put in some pictures here. Maybe I'll put in the pictures here while I'm walking across the room. And we're back. So little guys like this, right? I mean, he doesn't have his eyes on or any of the kind of detail work. But they're super cute, right? You just do this and then you put a red velvet thing on the back and a little wire hanger. It's super cute. But if you want the templates for making these little projects, it will be available for free on my website, quiltingcowboy.com. Just hit the shop tab. That's where all my patterns are. Some of them, like I said, are available for free. If you're in and around there and want to pick up something for $10, that would really help me out. But as always, I enjoy hearing from you. Let me know. You can reach me at quiltingcowboy@gmail.com. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you could just hit that subscribe button, that would really help me out. All right, talk to you next time. Bye.